All right, let's talk about two corporate giants. But here's the thing. The one you think you know, well, it might not be the one you should really be watching.
We hear a ton about BlackRock, right? They're the giant of global finance moving trillions of dollars around. But what if I told you the real power, the kind that affects your daily life, lies with a company that most people think of as, well, kind of boring? A company that controls the data our entire society runs on.
So let's unpack that, because this is where Oracle's influence is hiding. It's not in some flashy Wall Street portfolio. Nope. It's buried deep inside the essential, often totally invisible systems that pretty much run our lives.
Think of it like this. Oracle operates the digital plumbing for, well, everything important. We're talking about your medical history sitting in electronic health records, the government systems that pay out benefits or manage your ID, even the giant cloud platforms you use every day. Oracle is the invisible engine humming behind all of it.
And this setup creates something called data gravity. It's a really simple idea, actually. The more data a system holds, let's say all of a hospital's patient records, the more indispensable it becomes. Other applications start to cluster around it, and pretty soon it's just really, really hard and expensive to switch to something else.
And this quote just nails it, right? For a hospital, leaving Oracle isn't like canceling Netflix. It's like performing a heart transplant on the entire organization. It's incredibly risky, unbelievably expensive, and yeah, it can actually put patient care on the line. Okay, so you have this super stable, kind of boring, old school software company. But now they're making this massive, high stakes gamble on the AI boom. And wait till you hear the numbers they're talking about. They're just mind boggling.
So get this. They announced an AI order backlog of almost $500 billion. A number that big, it sent their stock through the roof. It's like they went from being a dependable old car to a high-growth rocket ship overnight.
But, and this is a big but, here's where it gets really interesting. That huge number, it's not what it seems. It's actually hiding a massive risk. Because when you peek under the hood, you find out that almost all of that future money is tied to just a few customers. And the biggest one, by a long shot, is OpenAI. Okay, so the deal is that OpenAI has promised to spend something like $300 billion with Oracle. But here's the little problem. OpenAI doesn't have $300 billion. Not even close. So you gotta ask, right? Where is all that cash supposed to come from?
Well, it looks like it's part of what some people are calling an AI money loop. Let me break it down. Step 1, an investor, say NVIDIA, pumps a few billion into OpenAI. Step 2, OpenAI turns around and commits to this huge contract with Oracle. And then, step 3, Oracle uses that promised money to go out and buy a ton of GPUs. From who? You guessed it, NVIDIA. It's this wild circular flow where investment money magically becomes revenue.
And this brings us to our first big knowledge gap. I mean, even if you account for the investments from partners like NVIDIA, there's still this enormous shortfall. We're talking about a $255 billion hole in the plan. Where is OpenAI going to find that kind of money to fulfill their end of the bargain? What's more, this whole AI gamble completely flips their business model on its head. See, Oracle has always been about selling high-margin software. That's their bread and butter. But building and running massive AI data centers, that's a totally different game. It's a low-margin, super expensive business, mostly because you have to constantly buy these incredibly pricey computer chips that go out of date like every other year. Okay, so that was a deep dive into some pretty wild AI finance. But let's pull back and connect all this to you, because this gets to the heart of why controlling data is a completely different and frankly much more personal kind of power than controlling money. Think about it this way. If one of BlackRock's systems has a glitch, it hits financial portfolios. That's bad, for sure. But if one of Oracle's systems goes down, we're talking about your doctor not being able to access your records or your Social Security check being delayed. Your most personal data could get exposed. The consequences aren't just financial. They're deeply human, and they're immediate. And that really is the main idea here. BlackRock runs the money rails, the tracks that capital flows on. And because it's money, those rails are heavily regulated and watched all the time. But Oracle, they run the data rails, the tracks your actual life runs on, your identity, your access to services. And these rails, they often operate with way less public oversight. Which brings us to our second big knowledge gap, accountability. When things inevitably go wrong in these super complex systems, a massive data breach, a critical service going offline. Who's to blame? Seriously, the company can point to the government agency can point to the contractor, everyone just points fingers. And it's almost impossible to figure out who is actually responsible.
You know, for decades, the advice has always been the same. Follow the money. That's how you're supposed to find out who really has the power. But maybe, just maybe, in a world that runs on this invisible digital plumbing, maybe it's time we start following the data.
And that leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. When the technical code in a database effectively becomes policy, deciding who gets benefits, who gets medical care, how your very identity is managed, who's the regulator? Who is making sure that all those tiny technical choices are actually being made in the public's best interest?